giant memo by James Damore. He is the guy who worked for Google and was fired because he wrote a long memo talking about sexism and stuff like that and what goes on at Google. And he triggered the fucking women who work at Google enough to get him fired, which apparently only proves his memo right. And side note about that, by the way, it's repulsive to think that the employees at Google, the world's biggest corporation, are people who get offended as easily as a typical college SJW neoliberal lunatic. And they're supposed to be working at Google, but I guess that explains why Google acts in the way they do and enforces anti-speech on YouTube the way that they do. I read through the memo, but just to put it simply, and I don't think I really need to read it and go through and say, he's right about this, he's right about that, because you know what? Thankfully, the majority of people actually do agree with him. Not enough to the point where Google's gonna get their head out of their fucking ass and hire the guy back on, not that he needs them, because fuck them. In fact, even Julian Assange of WikiLeaks offered him a job, and I hope he took it, because Julian Assange is a good and real guy, and I think he gave him a good job. As far as his memo's concerned, what he wrote in it, every single word he said is true. Everything he said is biologically true, scientifically true, and statistically true. He talked about gender and how it differs in biology. Fact. He talked about how the wage gap is a myth. Fact. He talked about how the wage gap is really more of an earnings gap. Fact. He talked about women who make less on average because women tend to pay jobs that pay less money. Fact. He talked about how feminism shouldn't exist, and when companies like Google only hire for those purposes for progressive reasons because, hey, you're female, or hey, because feminism, you are actually going backwards. Fact. He talked about how the oversensitive people who need safe spaces are actually damaging society. Fact. He talked about how all this gender-related stuff, how gender is not biological, it's personal opinion, and there's more than two of them, is wrong, scientifically false, and is absolutely insane. Fact. Every word in his memo was a fact. And the sad thing is, that is why he got fired. He got fired because he stated facts. I feel really bad for him. I do believe he got out of a shitty fucking company, but it's the principle. Okay, Google has completely destroyed YouTube because Google is literally allowing their SJW feminism employees to police YouTube, which is disgusting. And that's why everybody's being demonetized. That's why controversial videos are being demonetized. That's why controversial videos are being deleted. That's why controversial videos are being blocked out. That's why people who promote the fact that the anti-fact that there are 72 genders are being promoted at the top of the search results, and other insanely wrong things. We actually have a very rare win. It's a win for facts! Hallelujah! For once, facts actually won. Finally! Oh my god, we have been waiting. Okay, let's get right into it. James Damore was a Google employee who wrote a memo talking about how Google is, an SJW company and they're underpaying men, overpaying the women, they're biased against conservatives, all that shit, right? They're racist against white people, the whole deal. Google is an SJW company, so the rest of it is all just common sense. So James Damore wrote a memo exposing Google for all their corruption, all their lies, all that shit. And because he was smart, he was telling the truth, he was researching facts, all that stuff, of course, what happened to him? He was fired, as anybody who speaks facts would be. Now, there is actually an update a year later with James Damore, and this is fantastic. Take a look at this article. Jordan Peterson dunks on Google after it admits anti-male bias. Remember James Damore? Might be fun to talk again. Jordan Peterson gave James Damore a virtual chest bump on Twitter Monday after Google accidentally discovered that it has been underpaying male employees. Of course, any company that is SJW is gonna underpay the men for equality. as feminism always does. The Canadian psychologist had previously interviewed Damore about the ex-Google engineer's now famous memo accusing the internet giant of discriminating against men, which got him fired. On Monday, Peterson fraternally suggested that now would be a good time for the two men to speak again. Damore was dismissed from Google in August of 2017 over an internal memo he wrote condemning what he characterized as the company's wrong-headed diversity policies. Which means that anybody who is white and right-wing must be pushed down, and if you're not white and liberal SJW, you get brought up, while also playing the victim. And James knows that, and he was right, obviously. Which he attributed to liberal groupthink by employees. Yeah. The engineer argued that women are less represented than men in tech and leadership positions, in part because of biological differences, and that these average divergencies in talent and interest should be accommodated rather than denied or corrected. As the memo spread throughout Google and into the press, it provoked widespread liberal outrage. Of course, it had facts in it. Why wouldn't they get angry? Some scientists said that Damore had misunderstood the science he cited in his memo. Yes, because these days, even scientists are fucking being brainwashed into the SJW culture and will deny any fact. Even scientists, well, they're just self-proclaimed scientists for companies like this shit. However, on the right, Damore was widely hailed for injecting common sense into Silicon Valley's progressive thought bubble. Peterson was among the experts who endorsed Damore's grasp of the relevant gender research. In their interview on YouTube, Peterson said the memo was well supported by the facts and is certainly not an anti-diverse screed. The revelation that Google has a gender pay gap in favor of women would seem to give credence, at minimum, to Damore's claims about the company's hyper-woke culture. To be fair, though, after discovering the pay gap via an internal study promoted by a lawsuit by female employees, Google honored its commitment to equality by paying out an additional $9.7 million in salary to 10,677 employees, most of them men. So, two main things from this. One hilarious and one great. Let's start off with the hilarious one. Women at Google, aka the feminists at Google, complained that they were being underpaid, forcing Google to research what they pay their own staff, and because of the feminists at Google saying that they were underpaid, they found that the men were underpaid. Have you ever heard of better karma towards the SJW movement and feminists? That's fantastic. And now for the good thing. Because after they, did their study, found that they were actually underpaying men by $9.7 million. Holy fucking shit. Google, despite being an SJW company, actually gave out the money to the male employees. Can you fucking believe it? What a great day. We have James Damore being proven right, even though he was right from the beginning. We have feminist backfire. And then we have the company itself accepting it, admitting to it, and paying out the differences to their male employees. I can't believe... Am I on Earth? Are we back in reality? Have we left the insanity of the SJW culture even briefly to return to reality and actually like facts? Oh my god, I have goosebumps. We are supporting facts again! I mean, maybe only briefly, but I can't believe it. This is fantastic. James Damore, I don't know if you work for Google again. Quite frankly, if I was you, even with Google admitting to this and paying out their male employees properly, I still don't think you should work for them because they're scum. I don't know what it is you do now, but I'm sure you're very successful. And not only do you have the support of sane people, which you had ever since day one, but you now even have the support of crazy people because they were forced into doing proper research in focusing on facts. So you have been completely liberated. James Damore, you're fucking awesome. Thank you for exposing Google. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but thank you, Google, for properly paying your male employees equally. Wow. What a development.